On a day that will go down in history as one of the greatest 1500-meter Olympic finals ever, Cole Hawker won gold at the Paris Olympics in 2024 with an Olympic record. It was not just a shocking win for Hawker over the favorites in the race, but also a victory that marked, at least in some sense, the start of what has been an exceptional, perhaps unexpected rise in American distance running. And now, as the 2025 track season unfolds, we've seen only a continued acceleration of American distance running performance, with the latest results at the U.S. Championships, yet another event showing just how competitive it is to make Team USA. While it's probably impossible to pinpoint the exact rise of American distance running, reason-wise, after all, there's likely a multitude of factors out there that have contributed to this. I think there may be two factors out there that some people may not have completely thought about. And the first one, and I saw this somewhere and it kind of inspired me to give my thoughts on it, has to do with a type of training that has revolutionized this sport, a type of training that has become almost a sort of buzzword that people use in the niche of distance running, and that is double threshold. Now, while double threshold training has had a lot of success in the modern day, I do think it's interesting to really look at the origins of how this training methodology was developed, and that has to do with Marius Bakken. And what I think is a key point here is how really the founder of double threshold training observed runners in Kenya and how they would essentially intuitively operate around optimal threshold training in much of their training. East Africa and Kenya in particular is known for its distance running success. It's produced some of the greatest distance runners in all of running history. And I think what's interesting about this training is how it isn't necessarily the hardest training in the world. No, it's not really stuff like running 400 meter repeats all out or doing stuff that's essentially race effort or super duper high effort or things like that. There's certainly difficult or challenging days in training, sure, but I think what's notable is how in Kenya, these runners were able to train at a level that gave them the ability to make gains in a controlled way, not something that was too over the top, that would be too difficult to recover from, or something that wasn't necessarily beneficial for the aerobic system overall. So how does this relate to American distance running? Well, the popularization of this training is something that really has been popularized now around the globe. And it's something that I think probably plenty of top American athletes are using in their training right now. Of course, all athletes are probably training slightly differently as there's things they need to fine tune to their strengths and weaknesses and such, but it wouldn't be too surprising to see athletes complete double threshold days rather regularly throughout weeks and weeks of training, something like 10 by a K in the morning plus a 10K tempo in the afternoon, maybe a bit faster than marathon pace, or maybe some variation of that with more or less volume, faster or slower paces. But still following that overall idea of having a lot of volume at a certain intensity or threshold level. But I'm not saying that's the exact reason why, but it could be a large factor for why we've seen a recent rise in American distance running. You think about it like this: a trained athlete is very likely faster than an untrained athlete given the same individual. Now, an optimally trained athlete will be faster than an athlete that isn't optimally trained given the same individual. So it makes sense that an improvement in training methods, especially those that mirror or in some cases with lactate meters and such, really try to optimize the training of great distance runners such as Kenyan athletes, would lead to such a great success. Now, I think this can bring into some question the future of distance running training, one that has often found a lot of success in simplicity and going by feel and a lot of things like that. And thinking it can really be something that's more structured with lactate, or at least how structured it can be. Probably something for another video, but that's just an interesting thought. Second thing I wanted to talk about, though, and that's NCAA running and just how competitive it has become. You've had a lot of talent join the NCAA system, and I think that's led to a lot of great talent successfully making the jump to the pro ranks. You can take someone like Graham Blanks, two-time NCAA cross-country champion, and see some of the times he's run, such as 12:48 at Diamond League and a third-place finish at the 10K US Champs shortly after becoming pro, and realize just how competitive it is to win a title at the NCAA level, especially in NCAA cross country, where that's simply a level that makes you very competitive at the world stage. Then you have competition on the track as well. For instance, Ethan Strand ran a 7:33K performance indoors to set an NCAA record, something that was absolutely amazing. And now he's placed himself as a world championship runner and nearly a US 1500-meter champion. NCAA running is also a unique system that allows for distance athletes to essentially race for the majority of the year. They have a unique team camaraderie with cross country, including a national championship that essentially puts the greatest distance running talent in one race, and then a very competitive track season where there's a lot of meets that have very fast times, and also tactically challenging championship races that prepare top tier athletes for professional racing and especially championship racing. The thing is, I'm not exactly sure how much more competitive NCAA running is going to get or really can get, but it seems like times just get faster year after year after year. And I'm sure part of that has to do with the training aspect. Better training leads to better, faster times. But I also think part of that has to do with the competitive aspect. Year after year after year, there's great runners that make the jump from NCAA to pro levels. And it seems like their impact is getting greater and at a very fast rate. And then you have the 1500 meters, probably the most competitive event in the US right now. I do think Hawker, though, also someone that was developed through the NCAA system, probably peaks correctly at the right time for Worlds, which is, of course, very important. And I think he's still up there as favorite. But this race, again, just showed how competitive the US plans to be at the World Championships in Tokyo throughout these distance races. You have a lot of great performances in the 1500 meters, the 5K, and the 10K. But the question, I think, is now, will the rise of American distance running be something that's more sustained or something that's just more temporary? I don't think anyone really knows the answer to that question. Not just one way or the other, but also the individual nuances, because this rise is driven by a multitude of athletes, all with their own training, racing, etc. But I think with how widespread optimal training has become and how the NCAA system has gotten so competitive, that American distance running is in a great place to continue its ascent at the World Championships this year in Tokyo. I wouldn't be too surprised if there's another champion waiting, and perhaps we do see glory like we saw in Paris.